What if I were to tell you that the global economy operates under principles strikingly similar to those of a scam? Every dollar you manage to save, every pension contribution you make, and each mortgage payment you fulfill are all parts of an intricate system that can only survive if fresh participants continuously funnel money upwards. This phenomenon is not merely a financial pyramid lurking in the shadows of the economic landscape. It is the very operating system of our contemporary world. The harsh reality is that the sole reason this structure has yet to collapse is because governments, banks, and central authorities are relentlessly injecting it with new recruits, fresh loans, and persistent illusions of stability. The pivotal question is not whether this system will eventually fail. Rather, it is about who will bear the brunt of its inevitable downfall. To grasp this concept fully, one must first understand what a financial pyramid truly entails. It is not an overly complex idea. A financial pyramid promises extraordinary returns but fails to generate actual value through legitimate means. Instead, it pays out older investors with the funds contributed by newer ones. Charles Ponzi famously popularized this scheme in 1920 by enticing investors with an astounding 50% profit within just 90 days. Initially, he was able to pay his investors using money from subsequent participants, crafting a facade of success that lured many into his trap. Individuals invested their hard-earned money into his operation, convinced of its safety and profitability. However, the calculations behind such schemes are unforgiving. Each tier requires a greater influx of participants than the last one could sustain. Ultimately, after several months, Ponzi's empire crumbled, leaving thousands in financial ruin while he faced imprisonment for his actions. Despite his downfall, Ponzi's name endures as a symbol of deceit. The illusion supporting wealth generation collapses swiftly. Consequently, countless individuals see their fortunes vanish almost overnight. Financial markets operate under similar principles as well. Stock prices are influenced not solely by corporate profitability, but also by investor sentiment and speculation based on future expectations rather than hard realities. This intricate web highlights how interconnected our financial systems are while emphasizing their underlying vulnerabilities that can lead to significant repercussions during times of instability or loss of confidence among participants within these systems. They are driven by the anticipation that someone else will pay a higher price for them tomorrow. This phenomenon is often associated with cryptocurrency, which epitomizes the essence of pyramid thinking. Early adopters become wealthy only if a steady influx of newcomers continues to believe in the currency's value. However, it is essential to clarify that this issue extends beyond just cryptocurrencies. The entire financial system operates on similar principles. When does it begin to collapse? That is precisely when the true architect of the pyramid reveals itself: the central bank. In 2008, when the housing bubble finally burst, the Federal Reserve and central banks worldwide printed trillions of dollars. They referred to it as quantitative easing, but in reality, it was merely an infusion of new money into the system to prop it up. Old debts were settled with freshly minted cash. Losses were socialized while profits remained firmly in private hands. The pyramid did not crumble. Rather, it was reconstructed and expanded. The burdens shifted onto you, the investor, worker, taxpayer, through inflationary pressures, austerity measures, and a gradual erosion of purchasing power. History vividly illustrates this recurring pattern. Take the South Sea Bubble of 1720, where investors poured their resources into promises of trade with South America only to face ruin when the scheme collapsed. The Great Depression of the 1930s saw speculative bubbles burst, leaving millions destitute. Then there was Japan's asset bubble during the 1980s, where land prices in Tokyo soared above those in all of California until it all came crashing down during what became known as the Lost Decade. Each episode showcases a common DNA: systems that relied on endless infusions of new money and unwavering belief until reality struck back. The unsettling truth is that we have normalized this pyramid structure. We label it as growth. We refer to it as stimulus. We call it the economy. Yet if a system cannot sustain itself without continual injections of fresh debt and new supporters, perhaps it lacks any solid foundation at all. Maybe this edifice is constructed on shifting sands. Perhaps we find ourselves standing at its base, propping up its precarious existence. Today, this pyramid looms larger than ever before. Global debt has skyrocketed to an astounding figure exceeding $300 trillion. 3 times greater than the annual output of the entire world economy. Pause for a moment and reflect on this staggering reality. The entire planet owes 3 years' worth of collective labor just to break even. This situation raises profound questions about our financial future and economic stability. As we navigate this intricate web woven from debt and speculation, we must confront the possibility that our current trajectory may not lead us toward prosperity, but rather into deeper uncertainty. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for anyone seeking to grasp the true nature of our economic landscape and prepare for what lies ahead. Yet, politicians, economists, and central bank officials often speak as if the only viable solution is to incur even more debt, stimulate further growth, and borrow heavily from the future to patch the holes in the present. This situation resembles a financial pyramid scheme that everyone recognizes but few dare to dismantle. Halting its operations would inevitably lead to a collapse of the entire structure. This is precisely why inflation strikes with such ferocity. Inflation acts as a silent toll that the pyramid demands from its constituents. Prices escalate not solely due to supply and demand dynamics, but also because new money floods the system whenever governments run deficits or central banks intervene to prop up markets. When money creation outpaces actual value, your salary, savings, and retirement funds all suffer diminished purchasing power. The essence of a pyramid scheme lies in its fundamental flaw. It necessitates perpetual growth within a finite world. Eventually, there comes a point where there are no more unsuspecting victims left to recruit. Now here comes the unsettling part. If we set aside all legal niceties and formalities, we find that our global economy functions on remarkably similar principles. Take a look around you. Governments are borrowing trillions of dollars not based on tangible value they have generated but instead on debts owed by future generations yet to be born. Corporations accumulate debt to finance stock buybacks that enrich shareholders while postponing obligations for another day. Households rely heavily on credit cards and mortgages, constantly servicing interest payments while their principal balances remain stagnant. Inflation is not merely a random occurrence. It represents an inherent cost of maintaining the pyramid. It serves as the system's way of communicating. We may allow this to continue for another year, but you, the ordinary citizen, will bear the burden. The demographic crisis exacerbates this issue significantly. Social security systems and pensions in Western nations rely on younger workers supporting retirees. However, declining birth rates coupled with increasing life expectancy are constricting the base of this pyramid. In Japan, for instance, there are now more adult diapers sold than baby ones. This statistic goes beyond being just a demographic reality. It constitutes an economic time bomb waiting to detonate. Similar trends are emerging across Europe and increasingly in the United States as well. The very framework of these pension systems mirrors that of a pyramid scheme. Funds flow upward only as long as there are ample new contributors at the bottom. Without continuous growth, promises made by these systems become unfulfillable. Moreover, reliance on bailouts deepens with each passing crisis. History has shown that every major crisis over the last century has elicited predictable responses. The Great Depression ushered in the New Deal and an expansion of fiat currencies. The oil shocks of the 1970s led to a recycling of petrodollars, infusing oil revenues into U.S. Treasury bonds to keep the system operational. The real estate market collapse in 2008 resulted in trillions of dollars being injected into the economy via quantitative easing measures. The pandemic in 2020 brought unprecedented levels of financial intervention that further extended these practices. In each instance, rather than rebooting the system entirely, the response has been to double down on existing strategies, expand the pyramid's reach, and postpone accountability even further into the future. Meanwhile, those who benefit remain consistently unchanged. Much like in a Ponzi scheme, early entrants, those positioned at the top, reap disproportionate rewards compared to newcomers who join later in the cycle. As this intricate web continues spinning ever tighter around society's core fabric, it becomes increasingly clear that without radical change or reform, we risk being ensnared indefinitely within its grasp while those at the pinnacle enjoy their ill-gotten gains unhindered by consequences. Banks generate profits from money they essentially create out of thin air. Corporations issue bonds to repurchase their own shares, artificially inflating prices for the benefit of executives. Meanwhile, politicians make promises of advantages that they are fully aware will ultimately be funded by someone else. As a result, you, the depositor, the employee, the latecomer, are left at a disadvantage. This is why the analogy to a pyramid scheme is so crucial. Once you recognize it, you cannot unsee it. The global economy continues to stand because governments possess tools that Ponzi schemes lack: the power to print money, collect taxes, and even wage wars for resources. However, the underlying structure remains similar. It requires an endless influx of new capital, continuous recruitment of new participants, and perpetual expansion. No pyramid can sustain growth indefinitely. So what is the lesson to take away? First and foremost, abandon the belief that this system exists for your benefit. It does not. The financial system is designed primarily for its own preservation rather than for yours. Inflation, debt accumulation, and bailouts are not flaws within the system. They are intrinsic features that enable the pyramid to maintain itself. Secondly, grasp that true wealth does not lie in the promises made by this system. Real riches reside in assets that endure outside of it. Skills, networks, tangible resources, and diversified investments that do not vanish when faith in the system collapses. Lastly, remember that achieving financial freedom does not come from waiting for government intervention or rescue. It is attained through understanding how this system operates so you can navigate its traps effectively. While legally speaking, the global economy may not be classified as a financial pyramid scheme, its structural dynamics resonate with such models. Its existence relies heavily on a solid foundation of trust and continual investment. History teaches us valuable lessons. When this foundation weakens, when new money dries up and trust erodes, the resulting downfall can be brutal. And what about currency itself? It lacks any backing by precious metals such as gold or silver or even any physical asset at all. Instead, money is conjured into existence whenever banks issue loans. This crucial aspect often eludes most individuals' understanding. The cash you hold in your wallet was never simply printed in the way many envision. It came into being through the mechanism of credit creation. History does not repeat itself verbatim but often echoes themes from the past. The parallel here is clear. If you mistake a pyramid for a stable foundation, it will inevitably collapse beneath you. If this revelation offers you fresh insights into your perspective on economic structures and personal finance strategies, embrace them wholeheartedly. Understanding historical patterns can lead you toward better decisions about your financial future and provide insight into where to look for sustainable opportunities amidst uncertainty. In essence, what we're witnessing today is an elaborate dance where illusion reigns supreme over reality, a facade maintained by continuous cycles of borrowing and spending that cannot last indefinitely. As we navigate this intricate web woven by financial institutions and governmental policies, it becomes increasingly vital to recognize these patterns for what they truly are: mechanisms designed to perpetuate a cycle that benefits the few at the expense of many. Thus, as we stand on the precipice of potential upheaval within this system, one must ponder deeply about who will emerge unscathed when it finally collapses under its weight. In a system of fractional reserve banking, when an individual deposits $1,000, the bank is only required to hold a small percentage, let's say 10%, as reserves. The remaining amount can be lent out, creating new money in the economy. This loan can then be deposited into another bank, which also keeps a fraction in reserve and lends out the rest. From this initial deposit of $1,000, the banking system can generate several $1,000s worth of new loans. On paper, this creates a sense of increased wealth for everyone involved. In reality, it forms layers of obligations stacked like a pyramid. This structure remains viable only as long as trust persists within the system. If depositors suddenly demand their funds all at once, that trust can evaporate quickly. When such trust fails, it can lead to bank runs, financial crashes, and emergency bailouts, similar to what was witnessed during the Great Depression and again in 2008. The deterioration does not happen overnight. It has a historical context. After World War II, the global economy transitioned under the Bretton Woods system, with the US dollar pegged to gold. However, this arrangement collapsed in 1971 when President Richard Nixon suspended the convertibility of dollars into gold. Since then, the world's economic framework has operated on fiat currency, money that has value because a government declares it so and not backed by any tangible assets. Yet faith in this system is fragile at best. To sustain this economic model, governments have had to promise perpetual growth fueled by debt accumulation. Such growth depends increasingly on inflation and relies heavily on the labor efforts of individuals. Does this scenario ring a bell? It resembles a financial pyramid scheme when you consider pensions and social security systems. These funds do not magically appear from a vault filled with your contributions. Rather, they are financed through the payments made by younger workers who are currently employed. This setup functions effectively as long as there is an expanding base of contributors at the bottom of the pyramid. However, in countries with aging populations like Japan and Italy, as well as even in the United States, the decreasing number of young people entering the workforce leads to fewer contributions into a system that must support an ever-growing number of retirees. This demographic shift creates an unsustainable pyramid structure where mathematics simply does not add up. Governments attempt to patch these issues by borrowing more money and increasing currency supply, yet each fix deepens the existing divide. Consider also the housing market. For decades now, property values have been justified not by actual worth but rather by what new buyers are either willing or compelled to pay using borrowed funds. Each boom relies on fresh participants entering from below. However, when affordability dwindles, as we are witnessing today, the base shrinks significantly.